answering the question?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So why in ancient times did they drink milk?
Yeah. So it's a very good question. So if you were to think about the way in which milk production was historically in India, because you didn't have refrigeration, milk goes very bad if you don't have a transport system. Milk would need to be basically consumed by the household that produces it. So in many cases, the cows were kept. So where families had cows, they would keep them and look after them, and would be well placed to. If there was a Jain family that was keeping cows, they would be well placed to ensure that the calf would get milk beforehand. They also wouldn't kill the calves. When a cow gets older, they would be able to observe. They'd be able to look after its old age rather than abandon it or kill it. So, if you look historically in Jain records, there are rules about how cows should be treated if you're going to take their milk. Modern dairy practices are not consistent with those principles in any way. So I think if you're going to follow there are many things about our lives that are inconsistent with Jain principles at the moment. It's a consequence of living in a country like the UK. But if you were to follow the Jain principles regarding dairy, actually we shouldn't be having any, even though it's socially considered accepted. But that's a social norm, it's a tradition that's come. New technology got introduced, people started moving to cities, milk production, you just get a bit further away from it. I guess we become ignorant of the way in which things are actually produced.
So do you agree with the high nutritional milk? Does it agree with the standards? Yeah.
So at Bhakti Vedanta, personally, I think I see no reason to have dairy. Bhakti Vedanta Mana, they keep cows and they look after them. And linked from there, there's a project called Ahimsa Milk, where they try and produce slaughter-free milk. So in principle, I think what they're doing, they're giving out an education message about what goes on dairy farms, and they're giving people an alternative. The way in which I see it is that milk costs about £3 a litre to get it. So it's much more expensive than plant-based milk. And the other thing is that there are risks attached. So it's a business. If it doesn't do well, it might do well. If it doesn't do well, a cow doesn't just live for one day. It lives for up to 20 years. So if that business model fails and they don't make enough money to look after all those cows might end up in the slaughterhouse just like those ones in other farms. So objectively, I think what they're trying to do is a good thing. But when you see the cost of the environment, the personal cost of buying them, the difficulty in sourcing them, and the fact that, alright, you can have it at home, but 90% of the stuff that you have outside will still be made using milk where cows get killed, I think plant-based milks are just cheaper and better and more convenient alternative. But I mean, by all means, go out and look at what they're doing. If you get that instead of regular milk, I think that would be definitely a step in the right direction. And do you want to?
So for like the production of milk, what's like the time difference it takes between the factory produced milk, or like factory produced milk, and the vegan produced milk? Like, how long does it take for each one?
So just to be clear, vegan produced milk doesn't come from an animal. It comes from a plant. So if we're going to talk about something like we're going to talk about the non-slaughter-free milk, the time scales are similar. So essentially, milk gets produced by mammals in order to give to the offspring. So essentially, a cow needs to be old enough to be able to have children, and that takes, for most cows that are used for milk production in the UK, it takes about 2 years. So yeah, once they're 2 years old, bear in mind the cow lives for 20 years, humans live for 80, so maturity happens a bit quicker. But yeah, at the age of 2, they'll be able to start having children, and that would be similar, to be honest, across regardless of the way in which milk is used.
What do you mean this way? Like, you know, my world so material.
Polyester.
Yeah. So yeah, but basically cotton would be one material, nylon, polyester, acrylic, viscous. So they're linen, yeah. So for leather alternatives, we're really lucky in the UK. You know, we've got about 4 or 5 businesses that all they do is produce non-leather shoes. Lots of training shoes, like trainers don't have leather in them naturally. Sometimes the glue's made using animal products. So I think for wool and silk it's relatively straightforward. For leather you need to go to a specialist shop generally if you want something that looks and feels like leather.
Just buy the cheap.
Yeah, and also someone like shoes
non-leather, the ones on the right.
Yeah,
Very much.
my jumpers as well, but they look like leather, but they're not leather as well.
I used to have like regular milk on nylon, but on it it said our cows are treated well. So unless that's an obvious lie, then or this is like over-exaggerating how badly they're treated. Which one? Is that like, because it says our cows are treated really well on our farms?
Yeah.
So is that like an obvious lie?
So I think if you look on a package of meat, it often says the same thing as well. So we live in a society where people consider it acceptable to give an animal nice conditions while they're alive. So you leave them outside, you let them feed on grass, but it's still okay to kill it and eat it. Okay. Sorry?
What if your dad hatched? Then you wouldn't eat it.
You wouldn't eat it, but so in terms of milk, right? So let's just focus on dairy production. You asked like why won't they die naturally? So a cow can live for up to 14 years. They live for 15 to 20 years. It's very expensive to look after a cow. Okay? Just in terms of manure, you would get 30 to 40 kilograms of manure potentially a day coming from a 2-ton cow, right? So just think about how much food it needs to eat. It's not cheap. So if you're a farmer, a cow isn't producing very much milk. The amount of milk it produces goes down once it gets older. Why would you keep it and pay to look after it when someone will buy it off you and collect it and use it for meat? It doesn't make financial sense. But anyway, yeah, going back to your point, I don't think these people are deliberately seeking to mislead or lie. They may say that they treat their animals better than a cow that might be in a factory farm. But from society's perspective, killing seems to be acceptable in the UK. So the killing of bull calves, artificial insemination, providing it's done in a painless way, and then killing a cow when it's older, that's all considered acceptable in saying, I treat a cow